Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Bad Way to Save Money. This isn't the company I work for, but a company that services the same customers, and I interact quite often with their sales team. For a little backstory, this job is a sales job, where you represent a manufacturer and travel around a territory calling on customers that sell your products. The territory is generally at least 2 states and averages 30,000 miles on the road per year, if not more. The company in question was recently acquired by a new ownership group. They have a reputation for buying stagnant businesses and trimming down every possible expense they think is excessive. They sell it once it looks profitable, even though the company is barely functioning because of all the cuts. After the acquisition, the new ownership group decided that the sales reps' company cars were one of those excessive expenses. They were told to buy their own cars, and they'd be given a monthly allowance to pay for the vehicle. There are several problems with this. They drove at least 30,000 miles a year, so no matter what kind of car they bought, the car would depreciate in value very quickly. So they would likely need to trade it in a few years before it would be paid off. Also, if they wanted to use exactly what their allowance would allow for a car, they'd likely be buying a 10 to 15-year-old beater, and it still wouldn't cover fuel and insurance. The sales reps were used to getting a new car every 2 to 3 years. It's important in this line of work to have a presentable car, because it's often used to take our customers around the market. For example, my company has a very strict policy about keeping the vehicles clean and will pay to repair any cracks in the windshields or dents in the car immediately. That is because we are a reflection of the company when meeting with our customers. It's just all around a situation where they are getting screwed over and would be spending their own money on something the old company used to cover, and it's essential to their job. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. This new company didn't have a policy on flights. There was no rule on how far the destination needed to be before they were allowed to book a flight. Also, they were allowed to rent a car if they flew to a destination. Finally, the company card approval system didn't have very good checks and balances because of the acquisition. Basically, all expenses were sent to an understaffed department. Some were laid off during the acquisition. So they'd approve all expenses as long as a receipt was provided. So now the sales reps are buying ridiculously expensive super regional flights and just renting a car at the airport. One of the reps I sometimes bump into had just flown from Kansas City to Wichita, which is 2.5 to 3 hours away on the interstate. He then rented a car and drove back to Kansas City to make sales calls for 2 weeks. He ended up back in Wichita, making sales calls the whole way, and flew back to Kansas City to start the weekend. He'd been doing this every week for months. So was the rest of their sales force. He told me that his average daily travel expense was $50 more than the monthly allowance they gave them to buy a car. Apparently, the new company just caught on towards the end of the year, and their year-end travel expenses for them are massive. Since the discovery, there have been multiple meetings, virtual town halls, and a ton of emails with new policies and procedures for taking flights and submitting expenses. The biggest win for them though is that at the beginning of this year, they all got company cars again. The next story is called Insurance Compliance. I work as an auto insurance adjuster for simple claims. For some background, one of the most complicated types of claims that I deal with is backing claims, like a person backing out of a space or similar. This is because backing claims have a potential for shared responsibility depending on the location of damage, statements, and so on. Typically, for backing claims, it is crucial to take a very specific statement from both drivers to see the scene, even if virtually, and review the damage on both cars to determine liability. I received a claim, CV backed into IV. This means the claimant or other person backed into my person. Usually, in most backing claims, there is a claim open on both insurance companies, so they can each do their own investigation. Additionally, there's a process for billing the other company once liability has been determined. So insurance companies often speak during this process. It was day 5 for me, and I haven't been able to reach either my insured or the claimant after several texts, calls, and emails to both parties. This was my last call attempt for the day to the claimant, and I got an answer. I was immediately cut off before I could even finish introducing myself. She essentially stated that she will not speak to me at all and that I will have to speak to her insurance. I asked if she had an open claim and a claim number to save me the trouble, and she stated, "I am not in a place to provide you that at this time." I briefly mentioned just wanting to take a statement and that her insurance would want to do the same. But she doubled down and told me she will absolutely not speak to me before disconnecting the call. Okay, fine. I then found her insurance company, confirmed she hadn't opened a claim yet, then opened a claim on her behalf. I disclosed the information that I knew, location of the damage on both cars and the original effects of loss. Claimant backed into my insured. Her insurance agreed with me over the phone that it sounded like the claimant was most likely at fault, but obviously they will do their investigation. The location of damage alone paints a very clear picture. Damage on the claimant's rear bumper and damage to my insured's rear door is typically always 100% at fault on the backing party. They owe the greater duty to yield right of way and to maintain a proper lookout. Fast forward an hour and I got a call from my insured. She told me she had been speaking with the claimant for several days and they were negotiating an out-of-pocket solution. Now, this is normal and some people do this. But if the claimant had just told me that in the first place, I wouldn't have had to file an at-fault claim on her insurance. If you know anything about insurance, the claimant's ultimate goal was to avoid her premiums from going up. But now she will have an at-fault claim on her policy that will certainly taint her records. Enjoy! The third story is called I Can Wait. I have been working as a delivery driver for a small parts company in the RV industry. Think courier van small parts. I have a lot of stops in a day, 20 to 30, which happens when you live in the RV capital of the world. So one day I'm headed to one of my favorite plants with a hot order of screws, something they need badly. Let's call it plant 107. I like it because the receiver there is a super chill guy that takes care of me and makes sure I'm not waiting forever like other places. This particular day he has been given orders by his boss, who plays the part of the antagonist in this story. So I pull up to the plant and see across the way that he is busy and it will be a while. So I do what I normally do and just wait it out. About 15 to 20 minutes go by and he is still working and I'm still sitting. In times past when this has happened, I can just hand load everything onto a cart and walk into the office for someone to sign paperwork and I'll take the product to the correct location. This is when I encounter the B, I mean boss. The exchange went as follows. How's it going? Was hoping someone could sign for these so I can drop them for you. I know it's a hot order. Who are you with? Insert company name here. Why are you in such a hurry? Not in a hurry, but I know you need these immediately and the receiver is busy. I've been out there about 15 minutes or so. Do you need me to go out and buy you a new watch? You've only been here 5 minutes and I know because I pulled in around you. Yes, you pulled around me about 10 minutes after I got here. Well, I'm the one in charge here and I told the receiver to work on something else. So you are going to have to wait. Your package is not a top priority for us. So go back to your truck. I was choking back the urge to emotionally wreck this woman. Sure, I can wait. So I go back out to the truck and pull forward ever so slightly, so my side door is even with her window, open it up and sit there staring at her. Another 20 minutes go by and my boss calls, asking why this place hasn't received their screws yet. I tell him what happened and he says, stay there, I'll take care of it. Another 10 minutes go by and suddenly she comes bursting out of the office, screaming for the receiver on the radio, saying he shouldn't have left me waiting so long and that she is going to write him up for what happened. And then, in a WTF move, she just gets in her car and leaves. I look at the receiver and make sure he knows that I know that's BS and will vouch for him. We make fun of her for a minute and then split ways, in a transaction that should have taken 2 to 3 minutes tops. Several days go by and I found out that the owner of the company is my boss's golf buddy and he called him directly. Well, poop rolls downhill and she got in huge trouble. They demoted her, cut her pay and suspended her for 2 weeks. I still deliver there often. Every time she sees me, I give her a big smile and a rave and all she does is drop her head. Sure, I can wait. The next story is called Stolen Camera. I do marketing for a general contractor in the US. Part of my job requires me to organize the installation of cameras on the job site, mainly for marketing purposes like time lapses and stuff like that. My boss lives near the site that I was setting up the camera for and offered to drop the camera off on his way into work the next day. The next day he texts me to confirm where he dropped it off and also notified the site superintendent, boss of the site. The super would take care of the actual installation, which involved drilling into a post and plugging it in. Pretty simple stuff. Also important to the story, this super was retired a year ago and came back to work for us for unknown reasons. So you could say he is a little checked out of working at this point in his life. Fast forward to the day after my boss dropped it off. I called the super to confirm that he had installed it. He tells me that he never saw the camera on the site and I told him to check where my boss said he dropped it off, which was under a trailer and covered by an extra sign. He still claims it is nowhere to be found, sends a picture of where my boss left it and then suggests that it may have been stolen. I go to my boss and explain the situation, and we both agree that something doesn't seem quite right. We call him up to see what he says, and he is still sticking to his story that it was stolen, but sounds a little hesitant over the phone. My boss dropped it off around 7:30 AM, and the super was at the job site around 8 AM. Not exactly prime hours for theft, and a very small window of when the site was unsupervised. The standard procedure for when something is stolen from the job site is to file a police report and all that jazz. I also called the camera provider to see if there was any way to GPS track the camera. Unfortunately there was not, but the super doesn't need to know that. I and my boss agreed to craft up some beautiful BS in an email to see if anything happens. We said that we will follow standard procedure and file a police report for the camera. I also mentioned that I will be calling the camera provider to have them track the camera so we can get it back. The next morning he calls me back and says that he found the camera in the woods on the edge of the job site and blamed one of the subcontractors for moving it. He probably dropped a load in his pants when he read the words GPS tracking and covered his tracks. I think he was either trying to sell the camera or just really didn't want to install it. Since then, the camera has been installed after bugging the same super for about a month. Nothing ever came of the suspected theft due to a lack of evidence, and the super still works here. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.